Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of One-on-One Sports. I'm your host, Gray Aust, and today we will be featuring spots from the NBA draft. We're going to be looking at mid-majors that you should be watching out for in your March Madness brackets, and we're going to be talking about Robinson Cano as well as Theo Epstein making waves in Major League Baseball. It's going to be a great episode. Stick around. It's not every day that the NBA draft takes place on November 18th, but last Wednesday we saw the NBA draft, a particularly stacked draft in terms of talent from non-blue bloods. We see Anthony Edwards go number 1 from Georgia, James Wiseman go number 2 from Memphis, and then LaMelo Ball going 3, originally committed to UCLA, then playing this past year in Australia. To break it all down here, we have Jack Knuettel. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. So we're just basically going to break down 2 winners and 2 losers from this past draft. Then we're going to go to your favorite pick, and then a second-round player that could potentially be a star, maybe like a Manu Ginobili or Draymond Green down the line. But we're going to break it down with your 2 winners here first. Who are they and why?
You mentioned him. It's James Wiseman and the Warriors. Frankly, they got the best player in the draft. I think James Wiseman has the potential to be the best player in the future. Looking back on this draft, and basically the Warriors got the best player and a pick with need. They needed a big guy. They have a lot of guards. Steph Curry, they won't be without Clay this year, but Andrew Wiggins got a lot of good guards, but not a lot of good big men. James Wiseman is that guy for them. I think that could be the complete piece that they needed to keep competing down the line. And then in the second round, they picked up Nico Mannion at the 48th pick, which is an absolute steal. I don't know how he fell that far. He was projected to be a mid-first round pick, but that's an absolute steal. So two good picks, best player. My first winner is the Warriors. My second one's the Pistons. Killian Hayes at 7 is a great pick. They needed a good point guard for the future, and I think he can be that. He's really good in the pick and roll and really good on defense, so I think he can kind of be their base setter. And then picking up Isaiah Stewart and Sadiq Bey at 16 and 19 are also 2 great value picks. The Pistons didn't have a lot of young talent, so their biggest need going into the draft was getting a lot of young talent, and they come away with exactly that. So Pistons for me and Warriors for me are my 2 winners.
Pistons definitely coming along with a lot of talent to put around Blake Griffin as well, with Dwayne Casey trying to build the Pistons back up to where they were. And then I would got to say for my 2 winners, I mean, you got to go with the Charlotte Hornets. I know LaMelo Ball isn't exactly a sexy pick, but for a team that's guard heavy, you need a star point guard, and that gives LaMelo Ball a chance to flourish in Charlotte. He'll be playing under Michael Jordan, which should be a little bit weird for LeVar Ball, having to go to his son's games where Michael Jordan is the owner of the team. And then, like I said, he just gives them a face of the franchise. They haven't had that since Kemba Walker left to go to the Boston Celtics. So a star point guard was what Charlotte needed, and they got it. And I got to say the Kings. I mean, the Kings are the obvious winner. I think you'll agree with me here. When you have a player like Tyrese Halliburton at Iowa State just falling into their laps at 12. Tyrese Halliburton, a 6'5" guard out of Iowa State, really good wingspan, very good defensively, great playmaker, can shoot the ball as well. The Kings have needed a splash in free agency or in the draft for that matter, and they finally got it with Tyrese Halliburton. And so now we're going from the winners to the losers, Jack. Who comes out of this draft just in a poor position?
I'm sorry, but it's the Phoenix Suns. Look, I like James Smith a lot. He's a great potential, and I think he has a good chance to be a really good player. But picking him at 10 is a very high reach. I don't think I would have picked him personally at 10. I think most people would agree with me. I was seeing mid-20s to maybe around 30, 31. 10 is way too high. I don't know what the Suns were thinking. There were definitely players on the board that probably would have been better. Or you could have even traded down and picked him later, but I do not see them at 10. My second loser is the Boston Celtics. Aaron Nesmith and Peyton Pritchard are fine picks, but you have all this draft capital and not a lot of roster spots. I expect you to make a big splash. Take some of those picks and trade them. I don't know. I feel like this draft was a missed opportunity for the Boston Celtics moving forward. What about you?
I definitely think that the Boston Celtics were a big loser. I mean, you come off an Eastern Conference final appearance and you have a chance to bolster your roster with a player like a Cole Anthony or like a Josh Green or like a Sadiq Bey, as you mentioned previously. And then you pick Aaron Nesmith, who's basically just another wing shooter, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the losers, You got to go with the Chicago Bulls. I think them taking
Yeah, I
Patrick
agree.
Williams at 4 is a definite reach when you have a
Hmm.
player like Isaac Okoro or a Killian Hayes. Because if you're the Bulls, you need a point guard. You need someone to pair with Wendell Carter and someone to pair with Zach LaVine. And you have it there with Killian Hayes, or even, like I said, Cole Anthony, or even Tyrese Halliburton, who could have gone to the Bulls. But you take Patrick Williams out of Florida State, definite reach. So they're my losers for the night. And then it pains me to say, but the New York Knicks just fail and fail
Oh, come on. I
again.
don't know about that.
I mean, you have a chance to pair anyone who didn't take Tyrese Halliburton in the top 10 who had a need for point guard is just going to be a loser, in my opinion. Because you take Obi Toppin, he's going to give you some type of Showtime aspect. He's going to run the floor. He's going to light up Madison Square Garden with all kinds of dunks and fast break plays. But just you pass on Tyrese Halliburton, who would have been a perfect complement to RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett doesn't really bring it defensively. He's a very on-ball dominant player. You pair Tyrese Halliburton with him, that's a dynamic young backcourt that you'll have for years to come. And then again, just the Knicks. I just feel bad for Knicks fans everywhere. But I will say though that Emmanuel Quickly was a good get for them. I will say that drafting Leandro Bolmaro at 23rd was also a bit of a reach, but getting back Emmanuel Quickly from Kentucky was a good move for them.
I don't know.
And
I think we're
so,
sleeping on
go ahead.
this Knicks draft. I actually think it's not bad. But going back to the Bulls, I agree. They needed a point guard for sure, and there was definitely multiple on the board. And picking someone else is just Patrick Williams is fine, but I think he would have been better with Halliburton or Killian Hayes or any of the block of point guards they could have picked.
For sure. And so we're going to go to your favorite pick. I mean, you already mentioned James Wiseman. Would you say that it is your favorite pick?
I'd say it's probably my favorite obvious pick, but I think my favorite pick of the night, I promise this is no bias. RJ Hampton to the Nuggets at 24 is a steal. He's a top 10 talent, and he fell at 24. And he has to do nothing this year other than learn and sit behind Jamal Murray. And then 3 years down the line, when he can finally become that player that we all think he can be, he will shine with this team. This is a pick for down the line. I love this pick. I'm all for this. This is no bias, I promise you.
Sure. I think the Nuggets bias is maybe peeking through a little bit, but I got to go with Precious Achiuwa going to the Miami Heat, a Miami Heat team that is coming off an NBA Finals appearance when not many people thought they'd get there. And the number one issue they had was defending Anthony Davis down low in the NBA Finals. And so what do? They go get a dynamic power forward who can play defense on the interior. And I think that's what they had to do, and they went out and got it. This team is loaded with guards and loaded with wings. What they needed to do was bolster that back line, and they did it by adding Precious.
Yeah, he's the
Pick.
perfect Miami Heat player. He fits in with that system and that culture just pretty much seemingly. So that's a great pick for them.
Pat Riley really cooking something down there in South Beach. And so our last topic is going to be, what second round player do you think could really be a star? Or if you just want to throw me a curveball, throw in an undrafted free agent.
I mentioned him earlier, but I really like Nico Mannion to the Warriors. I think he goes to perfect situation. He's a bench guard learning behind a top 3 point guard of all time, who's Steph Curry. I don't know what else you need. Like, it's a guard offense with Steve Kerr. I think this is a perfect fit for him. I think he can truly star one day potentially.
I do love Nico Mannion, a very athletic guard, can really dish it as well. Showed that at Arizona. But I'm also going to go with another point guard, but it's going to be Trey Jones to the San Antonio Spurs. It's something about playmaking guards from Duke that I just really love. And I think he's going to fit that Spurs system pretty well because he's a very good defensive player and he's a very good distributor. The Spurs have never really looked for their point guard to score a lot of points. I mean, you had Tony Parker putting up 16 points a game, but the Spurs never need someone to go put up, say 20, 25 points. And Trey Jones isn't going to do that. So I think he's a great backup point guard role as well if they intend to start Patty Mills. But I just think Trey Jones is the perfect backup point guard. So I think that's a great get for them at 41. Any last comments that you saw? Any last comments that you saw from the NBA draft?
No, overall, I think it kind of went how most people thought it would. There was no real surprises. Couple of really good picks, couple of pretty bad picks, but looking forward to next year already, basically.
Mm-hmm. And just want to get your opinion on one more thing. How about some recent news about Bogdan Bogdanovic and that trade to the Milwaukee Bucks? Got any opinions on that before we go?
Yeah, the Bucks look to be in trouble. I don't know how they're going to escape this. Maybe potentially more draft picks lost. I don't know. We'll see. Bucks got to be careful. They're on thin ice.
Bucks got to be capable with on thin ice, both on and off the court. And so that'll wrap it up here from the hardwood. Jack Knuettel, thank you for your amazing input once again. We will be right back. With the college basketball season tipping off within less than a week, we're going to look right now to some mid-majors that you guys should watch out for, and maybe will influence your March Madness bracket come in the next few months. I am joined here by Colby Cook, and all the way from Poughkeepsie, New York, Zach Cioffi. How are you guys doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Gray?
All right, guys, so pretty simple format to start. I'm going to start with you, Colby. Give me some mid-majors that you're watching out for, can maybe burst a few bubbles.
All right, so I'm going to give you the quick comprehensive list. I'm looking at Furman, who's returning everybody but Jordan Lyons, and who was a fringe NCAA team, because that SoCon is absolutely loaded. I'm looking at Western Kentucky, that the projected lottery pick Charles Bassey is back for the Hilltoppers. I'm looking at San Diego State, even though Malachi Flynn left and was drafted by Toronto. And I'm also looking at ETSU. They've got Tennessee grad transfer Jalen Johnson, Howard bringing in the big guns, McCord Maker, and the Purdue transfer Noel Eastern, and our very own Elon Phoenix with the fourth best recruiting class in the state, 56 in the country, and a massively impactful transfer from Bryant University in Ikenna Ndugba.
I'm a big fan of your Furman mention. I got a lot of good buddies on that team, and you mentioned Elon, so my two favorite schools right there. So, Cioffi, what's up with you now? Give me some mid-majors.
You could always go with the Southern Conference. You could always go with San Diego State. I'm looking at the A-10 this year, especially St. Louis. St. Louis is a team that finished fourth in the A-10 last season, and Dayton was at the top of that conference last year, pre-unbeatable. They lost Obi Toppin, opens the door for some of those other A-10 teams. And I'm loving what St. Louis has coming up. There's top 6 players coming back. Jordan Goodwin, Javante Perkins, leading the list. They had 5 players average double figures last year. This should be a fun team to watch. A lot of experience coming back. And then staying in the A-10, you can look at Duquesne as well as St. Bonaventure and as well as Richmond.
Gotta love the Spiders, and then gotta love the Billikens. Special shout out to the St. Louis Billikens. And so we talked about some mid-majors that are going to be watched by both you guys. Give me a mid-major team that you could see, underperforming this year. Is there any team like that comes to mind? Colby, will go to you.
I'm going to go with Mark Pope's BYU team. This team last year with TJ Hawes and Yoli Childs was a legitimate Final Four candidate. And this year, they're going to be good, but I just don't see it. You can't lose 2 guys that are that impactful for that club and get anywhere close to the amount of production that they got last year out of their guys. And like I said, before coronavirus hit, they might have been, a sleeper team to go to the Final Four, much like Loyola Chicago did a few years ago. I see them falling off a little bit.
Chof, go to you.
I'm sticking right at the A-10. It's Dayton for me. I mean, they lose Obi Toppin to the draft. All those A-10 teams getting a lot better. So where do the Dayton Flyers go from here? I mean, they could drop to 5th, 6th, or 7th in their conference very easily after finishing undefeated in that conference last year at an 18-0 record. I could see them finishing 7th or 8th. It's a stacked A-10 this year. I mentioned those teams before that can all pretty easily jump Dayton.
And I think that's the important part with Dayton is that you had them go so high last year. They really started out in Maui. They started really well there, and then they just flourished in their conference. But like you said, you're losing Obi Toppin. And like Colby, you said, you're losing TJ Hawes. You're losing Yoli Childs, the 2 best players from your team last year. I expect them to fall off as well. And so I've heard a lot from Cioffi about the A-10. I've heard Colby talk a lot about the Southern Conference. Give me what's the best mid-major conference right now in college basketball and why? Colby, go to you.
I got to go with the SoCon for me just because of the depth. You've got Furman, like I mentioned, that's returning all but one of their top scorers. You've got UNCG, Wes Miller is a perennial powerhouse. You've got ETSU that, yes, we do know that, there's been a coaching change. We know that, but they'll still be good. Western Carolina, Mark Prosser's Western Carolina team is on the up and up, and last year was on the outside looking in at kind of that, outside shot at an NCAA tournament berth. The SoCon, I would say, is the most loaded group of 5 kind of non-Power 5 conference. Although I will say, I agree with Chof, the A-10 is coming in hot.
Chof, go to you.
On top of those two conferences, I like the West Coast Conference a lot. You got Gonzaga; they're a mainstay every year. They're the top major team every single year. Let us move to the Pac-12 personally, but then you also got BYU and St. Mary's coming out of that conference. So those three teams are always in contention to make an Elite Eight run, Sweet 16 run. So for me, it's the Western Athletic Conference on top of the SoCon and the A10.
Gotta love the West Coast Conference. And one more curveball for you guys. I love to go throw a good curveball. If you could pick one mid-major team to make a Final Four run, like Colby mentioned with a Loyola Chicago, or like a VCU type of team to make a Final Four run, who would it be and why? Colby Cook starts off.
Ooh. Now this one, Gray, is a little tough because you know, like I said, all these teams last year. Like I said, last year it would have been BYU for me, but this year obviously that's not the case. So I'm going to go with I'm actually going to go with the Howard Bison of the MEAC. They're actually one of the teams that I had on my list that I forgot to mention earlier. They've got Noel Eastern, as I mentioned, and McCord Maker, the first ever 5-star prospect for that school. He's kind of started a shockwave of high recruited prospects going to HBCUs. Howard is going to be armed and dangerous, and they are going to roll through the MEAC.
Coach, we'll finish it off with you.
Well, Gonzaga is the easy answer, but that's no fun. So I'm going to go West Kentucky. Just because you talk about West Kentucky, they have the Charles Bastian in the center. He has the size, can run the floor. So a lot of majors, when they struggle with the big schools, they don't have a big guy. This team has a big guy. They have the perimeter shooting. So they could pull off some upsets and string together some upsets in the tournament if they get there.
Gonzaga's not a mid-major. Gonzaga basically should be in the Pac-12.
Honestly, Gonzaga probably should be in the Pac-12. They run away with the WCC every year, and then you have St. Mary's also. But hey, watch out for San Francisco. Watch out for the Dons this year. But that'll do it here from the college basketball hardwood. We will be right back with Connor Witsoe as well as Will Carroll to bring it home here at the Baseball Diamond. Be right back. Welcome back to this last block of 101 Sports. Here we are going straight from the hardwood and to the Baseball Diamond here with Will Carroll and Connor Witsoe, and we will be discussing Robinson Cano and his PED suspension, as well as Theo Epstein and him leaving the Chicago Cubs organization. And then I'm going to pick these guys' brains a little bit and see if they can be MLB GMs. All right, guys, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing well myself. So, Connor, I'm going to go to you first. And Robinson Cano tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug and will be suspended for the entire 2021 season. And he will as well forfeit his $24 million contract for this season. What kind of impact will this have on the New York Mets as well as MLB itself?
So, for the most part, I think for the Mets in general for the season, I think they're going to be okay. They have a lot of depth at second base. I don't think they need to worry too much there. What I'd be worried about for them in general is the fact that you have a player, a very, pretty productive player who did quite well in 2020, testing again for performance-enhancing drugs a second time. And for you, that's a loss to your asset. You are expecting these guys to perform for you and to do right by the rules set out by the MLB. And he gets called for it once. Okay, yeah, that's a bad thing. That's a mistake. But you get called for it twice, and that's a problem. It makes you kind of wonder, are the Mets going to give him another contract again? And for me, I don't see it happening. I don't even see them having a need to, given the depth that they have at second base currently.
For me, I think it really questions Cano's legacy. I mean, like Connor said, it's a second suspension. It puts everything that he did in New York with the Yankees and in Seattle with the Mariners into question. He's 38 now, I believe, 37, and he hit 310 last year after hitting 250 in the 250s in 2019. So, they say, or you think they should have been tipped off, but at the same time, it was a shortened season, so he could have just had a really productive stretch. Now, for the $24 million he forfeited, I think the Mets are, in a sense, happy about it because, like Connor said, they have good depth, and they could put that $24 million towards Trevor Bauer or JT Realmuto or a 1-year deal for DJ LeMahieu.
And I think that's the point with Robinson Cano, is that you both mentioned that he's making $24 million, so that's off their payroll. But also, he's 38 years old. He's probably not going to get another shot in the MLB, one, because of his age, and two, because, again, this is his second choice that you both mentioned. This is his second time being caught with performance-enhancing drugs. And if it's one time, you can say that's a mistake. But two, it's a choice. And so now, rolling with Theo Epstein, leaving the Chicago Cubs organization, what would you guys say is his biggest asset? You see Theo Epstein, he rebuilt the Red Sox, he rebuilt the Cubs. What other GMs would be in that category with Theo Epstein? Connor, go to you.
I'd say Billy Beane for sure. I know Will and I kind of talked about this a little bit beforehand, but Billy Beane definitely. I mean, being able to take the Athletics, who basically has no money in their front office, and to build a championship team, a championship-based team. They haven't won yet. I'm waiting for the day that the A's hold up a World Series trophy. I think a lot of people in baseball are, unless you're the Giants, unless you're a Giants fan. But to be able to do that and do it consistently, I mean, since 2002, Billy Beane has changed baseball for sure. And I think anyone who's even remotely deep into the baseball world would admit that.
Yeah, I agree. I think Billy Beane is definitely extremely influential as far as like baseball, but I think Chaim Bloom and his staff of Eric Niender and Bobby Heck, I think they are also extremely influential, and they don't really get the credit they deserve. They transformed the 28th lowest or highest payroll, so the third lowest in the MLB, into winning 2 games in the World Series through waiver wire pickups in Joey Wendell, or just overall good draft selections, or bargain trades. They traded Chris Archer, who was not meeting expectations, for Austin Meadows and Tyler Glasnow, who both are some of their best players now. Though Austin Meadows really didn't perform that well in the playoffs, he still helped to bring him to the World Series. And I think that if more GMs follow the mold of deep analytics and believing, following their gut, I guess, and going with the people they think can do the best for them, and Kevin Cash managing, I think more teams could benefit from that and have a lower payroll.
And also, again, if you think about the Tampa Bay Rays, you can also mention the trade for Randy Arozarena, who absolutely went off in the MLB postseason. And so now I just want to pick you guys' brains a little bit. We've talked about, Billy Beane, he rebuilt the Athletics, and then you have the Tampa Bay Rays as well, who are in a rebuilding mode. If you guys were to be a Major League Baseball GM, how would you rebuild your team? Would you go analytics-based? Would you go through the draft? Would you, go for that Moneyball method where you're just basically picking up guys who can get on base? How would you guys rebuild a Major League franchise?
Personally, I think I would go about it like Theo Epstein. He always built through the draft. He would draft hitters, and then he would get pitching along the way. As we saw in 2016, he drafted the core of the team, Chris Bryant and Javier Baez, and he picked Anthony Rizzo up, I believe off waivers. It might have been a trade from the Red Sox, who was underperforming but was once a top-rated prospect. They signed John Lester. They traded for Aroldis Chapman because of all the depth they had in the minor leagues. I think that's the best way to go about it. And then, go in with the analytics as well. Maybe have an opener like the Rays did, as promoted by Chaim Bloom. But I do think that building through the draft is where the foundation of your team is built.
Yeah, I'd have to say I'd go a little bit between Billy Beane and Theo Epstein, because you can find players that can build for you the way that Billy Beane did, finding those guys that nobody kind of gets or believes can do very well, and to build that kind of structure that is able to win games. And then I think you can build on that by finding guys in the draft and building them up to be those kind of players that you need to fill in those holes that you need, because we've all seen that while the A's have a good strategy, it's not soundproof. They haven't been able to get to the World Series yet. They seem to always kind of fall short in the playoffs. So I think being able to create those holes that you have, to fill in those holes that you have in a team, is best done through the draft, because then you can build those guys up through your farm system.
All right, I think I'll start an out-of-the-park baseball league so we can test which method works the best for you guys. But that'll do it here from the Baseball Diamond. Special thanks to Will and Connor Witsoe for joining us. Thank you, guys. And that will do it here on another episode of 101 Sports. Special thanks to Colby Cook as well as Zach Cioffi for being featured on the College Basketball Block. Thanks for his amazing NBA draft insight. We thank Jack Knuettel, as well as Will Carroll and Connor Witsoe for their great insight on the MLB. And so that'll do it here from the McEwen School of Communications, as well as Poughkeepsie, New York, as regards to Zach Cioffi. Thank you all for watching. And as always, whose side are you on?